Well, I want to welcome you to 5 minutes more, a little segment that always ends up being more than 5 minutes, where we extend the conversation from this last weekend's message. This last weekend, I taught on what does it mean to be spiritually healthy and whole, how God desires all of us to be whole, to love Him with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our mind, all of our strength. And we talked about how May is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. And so when I knew that we were going to be teaching on this, I was so excited. I reached out to my friend Christopher Lamarck and I said, can you be available for us to have kind of a breakdown after the message? So, Chris, it is an honor to have you here with us, wherever we are, wherever people are at.
Hello, everyone.
But to be face-to-face with you, we haven't seen each other since the last event.
Since March 7th, actually.
Yeah, March 7th, last time we saw each other. And then the whole world changed.
I know.
Since then. So it is just to see you face-to-face is good to be with you.
It's good too, brother. Thanks for having me.
And Chris has been around. Soul City knows what we're doing. We've become friends over this last year. But why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story, and then we're going to get into why we're having the conversation today.
Sure. Thank you. So born in the city of Chicago, 1979, abandoned, unfortunately, by my mom. In 1982, along with my 4 beautiful sisters. So I'm directly in the middle, right? 2 older girls, 2 younger girls. And briefly in 82, we were separated and we were sent to various homes. And then fortunately at the time, God placed us all back together with the exception of one. And we was all taken to my mother's brother's house, which is on 64th and Hermitage in Inglewood. And from 1982 to 94, we all lived a very complicated life. Yeah. And I say complicated now because I understand that abuse is never just what it seems to be, right? And so living in that home, I endured both physical, mental, emotional abuse. I was often locked inside of a dark basement, sometimes at 3:30 in the afternoon or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It was just a part of the abuse, right? Can you imagine being locked inside of a dark basement?
Kid, man.
Or being locked inside of an enclosed back porch where there's a garbage can there and my arms are sort of inside of my shirt because it's cold and you can hear like the roaches and the rats running around in the enclosed space. And so I endured that from 82 to 94. And from 94, I was sort of pushed out because I started to fight back. Yeah. And I spent a little time in the neighborhood, wandering around in the streets, lived with some cousins out north in the suburbs, went from Inglewood, Chicago to Hoffman Estates, and that was a huge culture shock,
very different
right?
world, yeah.
Very, very, very different. It was like living inside of 90210 for real. It was really, really different. I'm used to basketball, right? I come to that school, they're fencing,
lacrosse,
gymnastics, right? Like all these different things I had never seen before. Right. And I remember rebelling against my cousins because here I come from this place where I was abused and neglected, and then my cousins put me in a situation where it's a nice condo, here go your own key, here go this nice school, but I wasn't used to any of that, so I started skipping classes, and then they turned me over to the Audi home, and then I lived there, and then I started to navigate through the group home system, and so fast forward. I went from 94 to 97, just kind of going through the group home system. 97, lived on my own, found my fate in Jesus Christ, and music started to come from that. Yeah. And it's been a journey since then.
Yeah, and I know that music was always kind of a part of it, but like when you say music, like legit, like recording, putting out tracks, legitimate MC over here.
Yeah, thank you.
Like legit. And so that kind of became a part of the process for you too, because early on, even in what you were writing, was about your struggle and about the mental and emotional and physical abuse that you endured.
Definitely. Music was my first form of therapy. Yeah. It was the first time I felt any control in my life, right? Yeah. It was this gift that God gave me. It was the first time I felt God's love for me, right? Because imagine having all this pain and not knowing what to do with it and being placed on antidepressants as a child, right? And to be called a delinquent. Yeah. And then now I have the music
Right.
And I have this faith, this idea that God is bigger, God is in control, mixed with my passion for this newfound art.
Yeah.
It was incredible for me to have
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So then fast forward a couple of years and you are kind of going about your life and had a job doing that whole thing. Music's still kind of around and part of it, right? Big part of your life.
Definitely.
But also had a 9 to 5 and you were kind of doing that thing. And then something eventually led you to the point where you had a pretty significant change of direction in your life, and you started what I want to unpack in a moment, which is coffee, hip hop, and mental health. So why don't you tell us kind of what led you to taking all of your experiences and then some of the work that God was doing in your life to start what you're doing now?
So I'll say in 2005, I left church due to church hurt. Just, complicated still.
Right.
Growing up the way I grew up, you don't really know how to build real relationship because there's always this thing of fear.
Right.
And so I started to pursue music really hard, right? And so from 2005 to literally 2019, I just had like this moment, like this mental and emotional breakdown sitting inside of a Starbucks. Like, imagine all of these experiences and still dealing with the unresolved trauma that happened in my childhood, right?
All catching up.
All those things, present day disappointments, messed up relationship, jaded foundation, lost my mom in 2013, lost my godfather, lost my godmom, never knowing my father, and all these broken relationships. And here I am sitting inside of this coffee shop with all of this disappointment, all of this pain and frustration, and I started to cry uncontrollably. And I couldn't stop. And I knew in that moment something was wrong.
Something's breaking.
Yeah, like something is breaking. And so I'm sitting here and I'm wiping my face, and I'm embarrassed because it's crowded. I'm sitting right inside the Millennium Park train station. So, it's tons of traffic.
Right.
And it was in that moment that I knew I needed to actually go and get some help, right? And so I was already in couples counseling with the young lady I was with, and that was cool, but it wasn't enough because you can't really get to the grit of who you are, right?
Without doing your work,
Right, and so I started to go to therapy, and it was hard. It was really, really hard because I started to open up all of these doors that I had never dealt with. And I sort of pushed them back, right? Just to live and be present in the day.
Right.
And then it went from hard to, whoa, this is cool.
Yeah, there's good stuff.
It's so good. And you know what helped me really become vulnerable in that space? Because therapy only really works when you allow it to work for you, right? And you have to be ready to be vulnerable. My therapist said to me, he said, Chris, the moment you forgive yourself for what happened to you as a child, we can actually get some real work done. And in that moment, it was great because I really did think that it was me. It was my fault that my mom and my dad wasn't there, or why did I get abused, right? And so after that, I started experiencing these great sessions, excited to go to therapy, right? And then I went home one day and I was just thinking about this concept. Man, how can I take what is happening here to the stage? Because I was thinking about all these years I would be on stage in these nice tuxedos, full band. The crowd is crazy, but I would be suffering in silence the whole time, pretending to be okay. Right, just I mastered the art of performance, right? And so I say, you know what? When I return back to the stage, I want to be every bit of my vulnerable self. But I also want to take these principles, these ideas, to the stage also. And so I literally wrote coffee, hip hop, and mental health. Didn't know what it was going to be, right? But the more I started to experience this objective, non-biased experience in therapy, I said, okay, this would be cool if I bring therapists to the stage, right? And we have this conversation about life, and we open it up so the Black and the brown community can start dealing with some of the stuff that we don't deal with. And that was the start of it.
Well, and I love too what you said, is that the whole idea and thought is to take obviously all your experiences, your work, but to normalize therapy.
Yes.
Because for a lot of folks, there's a lot of resistance to getting help for whatever reason. And yet all of us are struggling, wrestling with whatever it is that we got going on. And so you're like, how can I, especially for the Black and brown community, like how can I normalize this? Like, here I am. I'm going to take this risk and be vulnerable out here, and then inviting others to do that with you. And I think it's been remarkable to see in a very short amount of time how folks have resonated with that.
Yeah, it's so amazing. And so the reason why the campaign is centered around normalizing therapy, because When you think about our community, in the Black and brown community, there's so many structural barriers, right? There's less medical resources. The schools are in bad shape. There's only so many counselors like assigned to different schools. So when something traumatic happens, like a shooting, most of the time, these kids go right back to school. And they have to relive this thing over and over and over again. So it's like, okay, well, these conversations are not actually happening too, because I know growing up, I was called all type of names because I was emotional.
Right.
But it's a part of the conversation in the community in general. And so I say, you know what? I want to make this thing cool. And so like the whole thing with coffee, hip hop, and mental health, we are the bridge between the community and the mental health profession in general, right?
That's your whole thing, is connecting people to therapists.
It's everything. And so I'm an advocate not only for the conversation in itself, for the therapeutic space, right? Because their marketing platform is different. They can't walk up to you and say, hey, you look sad, here's my card.
Look, and let's be honest, we have a lot of therapists and counselors that go to our church. Lots of times their marketing, it's not that great. So, no disrespect. They don't need to be, because people find them. But your whole thing is, how can we take this thing that's so helpful and not make it cool, but put it in an environment where it's like, it's normalized. There's music and there's connection and conversation, and and not just that though. One of the things I want to just make sure we highlight too is you're doing that through the events. And in fact, the last live event was hosted here at Soul City Church, which I was at, and I brought the kids too. I hope that was okay. Cool. And it was so fun to see. But you're also reaching out to young adults as well and doing work with young adults. Just real quick, talk about that. Then I want to talk just one more bit about coffee, hip hop, and mental health.
It's called The Village, and I'm trying to continue to work with them, right? Because before this whole pandemic and the shelter in place order, we was meeting with them bi-weekly inside of a restaurant. The restaurant was shut down for us right in the heart of Bronzeville, and we was having engaging conversation with them and also their parents. And the village, think about the village. It really does take a village to us, for us to raise not only young adults, but to raise adults in general. We all need each other, right? And so that's the goal of that part of the company, is to continue to push the young people forward, because we got to think about it. If we don't talk about our stuff, they're not going to be conditioned to talk about their stuff as well.
Right.
So I love the idea of meeting them exactly where they are. No judgment. You can think, be, respond how you respond, but let me help you with these tools, to hopefully guide you so you can make better decisions.
Man, I love that. And so that's the work that you're up to. What's kind of your big hope, big dream, big desire for normalizing therapy, for coffee, hip hop, and mental health? What's kind of the big picture dream for you?
So the big picture dream, let's start with just Chicago for right now. I'm literally studying the Metra train system and the L system, right? And so if you look at the area view, right, and then you look and you see how strategically the rail line connects with every neighborhood in Chicago, right? That's how I want to connect with every community and every ward in Chicagoland, right? So you and I are having a conversation, right? I live in Bronzeville, we're in the West Loop. So you know about coffee, hip hop, and mental health, and now you're working with me so we can normalize therapy, right? But I'm also in other parts of the city, right? In Humboldt Park, right? And the goal is to really stretch it out so we can begin to have this conversation in a more comfortable place now. It's like we can talk about therapy, because when you come to these events, I know for a fact when people get in their cars on their way home, they're having these conversations.
That's right.
Now, but that's the goal for Chicagoland, right? The big goal is to take this thing on a tour and show up to every freaking city and state and have a conversation.
Just roll up.
Man, because imagine if you can show up to Indiana, right? You can talk about mental health, but what's happening in Indiana, right?
Uniquely.
Right, and so cultivating conversation based upon the actual need in that city or that state. And that's how you can begin to really meet people where they are, but really spread the conversation. But you have to meet them where they are.
Yeah, and I love, you've laid that all out for me, the big vision of where this is all going. But what I love about it that's so simple, Chris, is that all you're trying to do is help people get help.
That's it.
I want to help people get help. And however I can connect the dots and help facilitate conversation, helping young people get help, helping older folks get help, how can I get and that's all you're like a connector. You're just trying to connect people to that. And I think I've told you this before, what is so impressive to me about you is this comes out of your story.
Yes.
And your work. And there was no coffee, hip hop, and mental health to help you kind of put these pieces together.
Man.
And so you had to figure, this out and navigate this. Thank God you did and are still doing, kind of do your work. But that out of that, you would want to help others do the same, I think is such a beautiful, beautiful picture. I mean, that's what we're talking about in this series. That's what we're talking about at Soul City Church is how can we help people get help from God, right? How can we help people get help from professionals? And how can we help people help each other in creating safe space to just be like, yeah, this is what's really going on. This is where I'm really at. So I love that, man.
I appreciate that. And I want to share this. This is something very important, for the visionaries out there, right? Yeah. For everybody who wants to do something for their community. You just have to start.
They're right there.
You just have to start. One of the cool things about this whole thing is vision empower the tools, right? Vision really empower the tools. I built this entire company off a refurbished iPhone 7. I have never thought that I could really build a company like this with the very small things.
Yeah, right.
But I believe in using what you have. Yeah. There are zero excuses. Yeah. I'm doing this thing called healing in real time. Yeah. I'm still struggling. Yeah. I'm still managing my depression. Yeah. This pandemic has triggered me in ways that I thought I would never be triggered again because it brings up where it's family. I'm far from my sisters. I'm the only one that live in Chicago. It is tough. That's real. It is even hard sitting here. I can feel the tension and the anxiety sitting here. Yeah. But I am determined and I am focused not only to make sure I take care of myself, but I want to take care of you. And my philosophy is if you take care of God's people, God will take care of you. And so Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health is for the people. I want to make sure we bridge the gap between community and the mental health community also, so that way we can save some lives one conversation at a time.
Man, woo!
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
I don't even know why I was on a mic. Just give you a mic the whole time. Well, all right. 2 things in closing. If people want to go and learn more about the organization or I mean, listen, I've been repping this, for a while now. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
So, but if they want to take a next step, where do they go?
So you can log on to CHHAMH.com. That is the acronym, which is Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health. Okay. You can also follow us on Instagram and also Facebook at Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health.com. And if you're looking to join the movement, therapists, psychologists, anyone who works in the mental health profession, you can log on to normalizetherapy.com, fill out a form so we can make some time to talk to you to see how you can help us. Thank you again. This is Christopher Lamarck, and you have been watching Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health.
You don't get to close it out, man.
I don't.
It's my show.
I'm so used to it.
All right, last thing is you've given me a nickname that no one has ever given me before, and no one calls me. What's you like every time I'll either text you or call you, what do you call me?
PJ.
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 No one in my life calls me PJ. Why do you call me PJ?
You know what? His name is Pastor Jerry. It's just easy for me to say PJ. I don't want to say the whole name.
from the first time we hung out.
Yeah.
Within like 30 seconds, you said, you know what, PJ? And I'm like, who's PJ, man?
I give people nicknames all the time.
Dude, I love that. That's very meaningful to me.
Endearment, right?
It's very meaningful to me. So thank you, Chris, for your journey. Thanks for being honest and real, even in this time. And thanks for helping other folks get help, man. That's all we're trying to do. And I'm grateful for you, and I love that we get to do stuff together. It's really meaningful to me.
Thank you. Sorry I took over your show, my
bad. Yeah, I know. I should have seen it coming. All right. Thank you all so much for watching.